Welcome to Father, Son, and Holy Guest, episode number 2.
I'm the son. I'm Bill Culpepper.
I'm the father, and I'm glad to be with you this day as we continue this series and look forward to talking to some very interesting people in the weeks to come. And we're very proud to be able to bring these interviews to you.
Yeah, today we have Vicki Coles, who is a part of Abiding Love. It's an adoption ministry that caters more to the mother who is placing her child into another family, as we talk about open adoption versus what is traditionally thought of adoption. And she shares her own story about how she came to adopt her 3 children. And it's a great story. I hope that you stick around for the whole time to watch it.
What a tremendous work that she and Carrie down on St. Simon's do, and others across the country to take a little bit different take to give women an option. I know that I can't possibly understand what a woman might be going through when she's experiencing a pregnancy and not exactly knowing where to turn.
I think that's why we have people like Vicki who can help us out with that. So why don't we jump into the interview and listen to what she has to say about it, the whole thing.
So Vicki, welcome. We're glad to see you. You're all the way up there in Savannah, Georgia. Thank you for joining us, and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to Savannah, Georgia. I think you're a South Georgia girl, but how'd you get to Savannah?
Well, I'm actually a mom of 5. 3 are adopted, and I am married to a retired lieutenant colonel in the Army, and so he's now a professor with a college. And so grew up in Moultrie, went to college in Valdosta State, and then went to Atlanta for my first job after college. And God brought me to Savannah, and in Savannah is where I met my husband. And so we actually traveled with the military, then Hawaii and Rhode Island, and then God brought us back to Savannah. And we were just so entrenched here that we decided to retire here. So that's how I got to Savannah.
Okay. And I apologize to you. I said you're a South Georgia girl, and unfortunately that's old slang I'm trying to lose in this. So I appreciate.
That does not bother me at all. That it's no sign of disrespect for me anyway.
I appreciate your grace in that. Thank you so much. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing. Really, at this point, we're talking about Abiding Love Adopt, but what got you into this?
When we were in Hawaii, God laid it on mine and my husband's heart, even during marriage counseling, that we would adopt. It was something that we had always, both individually, God had laid on our hearts. Did not realize when we got married that we would struggle with infertility. But when we were in Hawaii, we had the opportunity to adopt our now 17-year-old, almost 18-year-old. And he, just amazing. He was medically fragile, though. He had been born at 25 weeks, and they didn't think if he was going to make it or not. But God touched him and healed him, and it's just been one of the biggest blessings. And so for me, adoption became very important because I'm holding him, and obviously he's Hawaiian. So if you've seen any Hawaiians, they don't look anything like this South Georgia mama. And so as I was holding him and just loving on him and praying over him, God just really pierced my heart for his birth mom and just what she must be going through for to not know where he was or who he was with, and just wondering, because I couldn't imagine, like now having him in my arms, I could not imagine being her, wondering where my child was. Is he okay? Is he being loved? And I wanted him to know his Hawaiian culture. I believe family and ancestry is very important. And so I reached out and found his birth family and started a relationship with them so that they would have.
That's unusual, isn't it? Or would that have been unusual 17 years ago and not unusual now?
That's exactly how it was. 17 years ago, I like to tell people that I was doing open adoption before it was cool. And so, but now open adoption is something that people do every day. Honestly, it's almost expected. There's so much research out now that shows that an adoptee who doesn't know his birth family and doesn't know, or her, know their birth family and their roots, everybody wants to know where you come from. That's why Ancestry.com and DNA&Me and all that is so popular right now, because everybody wants to know where you came from. And it's that much more for an adopted child. And, open adoption is not co-parenting. That's one of the things that seems to scare a lot of people, but that's not what it is. I am his mama, I am his parent, but he gets his looks and his natural abilities. They don't come from me. They come from his birth parents. And but his heart, his love of the Lord, and his training, and helping him make good decisions and learning how to make decisions, all that stuff comes from me and my husband. So we love open adoptions. We've adopted 2 more, and we have open adoptions with them also. And so we believe wholeheartedly. Sorry, my 17-year-old heard me talk about him, so he came around the corner to look. But come here, Jared, you can stick your face in. But we believe wholeheartedly in open adoption. And what it is, he's worried about his hair. That's a 17-year-old thing.
Not a problem.
Come and say hi.
Hey, how are you?
Doing great.
Good to see you. Thank you for letting us have a few moments with your mom here.
But so anyway, but it's just been important. And it's always like, if he had a family question about his family history or anything like that, he was just able to, his family lives in Hawaii, so we did a lot of our communication over Facebook and messaging that way. But my other 2, their parents live here on the mainland, and so we have a lot of interaction with their parents, even their grandparents, like their birth grandparents. Like my adoption may be a little bit unusual because it does go so deep into the birth family, but because a lot of them don't do that. They usually just with the birth mom or the birth father, but we kind of just have a huge tribe of people that we.
Vicki, could you maybe explain what open adoption is, so that we are completely on the same page?
Yes. And so today, open adoption, true open adoption, like you'll have some agencies who say, yes, we do open adoptions. But then what they really mean is they may exchange like first names, and then the agency kind of acts as a mediator between the adoptive family and the birth parents. True open adoption, and what we do at Abiding Love, is you exchange first names, last names, what city your child is in. We don't ask you to exchange like personal addresses. That's something that if you choose to do that down the road as you've built a relationship, then that's up to you. But we do expect adoptive parents to share, especially the adoptive mom, because we work with more birth mothers than we do birth fathers. And so we do expect the adoptive mom to be willing to share her phone number with the birth mom, and so that they can build a relationship and they can form a bond. And so what it usually is that you exchange text messages. So like, let's say the baby rolled over for the first time, without the birth mom saying, hey, what's going on? That the relationship's so good, the adoptive mom would like shoot a little video and text it to her and say, hey, look what the baby just did. And it's usually visits, and not like, this isn't like they go spend the weekend, but it's like a day visit. Or like we have some adoptive families, as the children get older, like say 3 years old, they'll come spend the weekend and they'll go like to the beach together, or they'll go to a park or something like that, just to spend time with each other. Right. And they know that's their birth mom.
I have some friends who have an open adoption, and I think he's 3 or 4 now. And I'll frequently see pictures of not only my friends and the son, but the birth mother's there too.
Right.
And it's not always birthdays, but she's at the birthday party. And, part of me is thinking, that must be so difficult and that must be emotional. And then part of me is like, that's great, because there's literally a whole village built into the system.
Right. And well, like I said, research now supports what we do and what we believe in, which is the most recent actually happened in 2019. And it was talking to late adoptees, like people who found out that they were adopted late in life, and how it affected them emotionally, mentally. And it did a lot of damage. And so, one of the things I get asked about all the time in open adoption is boundaries. And, because what if the mom is an addict, or You know, what if the dad is an addict or something like that? You know, obviously you don't have to do a visit with someone or have them around the child if that person at that point is high or, you know, not acting appropriately. It's our job to extend grace and hopefully show them the love of Christ so that they can and want to know him and have him a part of their life. So in boundaries, it's okay. I mean, you are the parent. The adoptive parents are the parents. So it's completely fine to set boundaries and say, I mean, I had to do that in my own adoptive relationships where I had with the birth parents. And I'm like, you know, you can talk to me and you can call me, but you're not going to be able to see him until you get clean, you know, and that kind of thing. And they actually, one in particular, she tells me all the time that me still keeping my door open and allowing her to talk to me and check in on him, knowing it motivated her to change her life, especially as he got older, because she knew then he was going to start to recognize things and have questions. And so she wanted to be a different person by the time he got old enough to really interact with her. And so, and we see that even with our moms that we work with at Abiding Love. Having the open adoption gives them a reason to move forward.
I'm curious, is open adoption an outlier in this? Is it the norm? Is it something that's becoming the norm? Where is open adoption in the big sphere
picture
of the adoptive world?
I would say it's becoming the norm. It's not 100% the norm yet. We still have some agencies who still believe in the old way of doing things, but birth mothers are becoming more educated themselves, expectant moms. And so there's so much, you know, the internet changes things. Look what we're doing today. And there's so many platforms now where they can talk to other birth mothers and they, you know, and people who were like shut out of their children's lives, you know, back in the 60s are very vocal on the internet, on Facebook groups. They have their own clubs, literally, like where they are doing everything to warn people about closed adoptions and what kind of damage it can cause and just all of those things. So I would say it's becoming the norm. I mean, it really is.
And is it mostly through private groups like yours, which is Abiding Love, or is it the state organizations? Are they moving in that direction as well? What are you seeing?
The state is a little bit. The state is really trying to get foster parents to really start to build relationships with birth parents because, you know, the state's goal is reunification. I mean, when a child comes into foster care, they want them to go home. And so they really would like foster parents to work with and mentor birth parents. But I think there are some really great foster parents who do that and do that well. And then there are some that still have the mindset of, I need to be fearful. And again, I mean, please understand that I understand that if you have a child brought into your care and that child was hurt, like physically, you know, by the birth parents, you may have a different, you know, you have a different reason to keep a boundary between them. But if the child, like if it was drug addiction or just, you know, malnourishment because they didn't have the money to feed the child or neglect, and because a lot of children come into our system more through neglect than anything else.
There are a lot of great programs out there of people that work with those in the foster care program and try to help make those unifications happen. But Abiding Love is not a unification. It's a moving on and moving to a new day.
Right.
So what would some of the you know, there's things that pop into my mind, obviously, but from your perspective and your work, what are some of the reasons why a mother would be putting her child up for adoption through open adoption?
Well, one thing, just so I can go ahead, since this is going to go out there, adoption language is very important, just like with anything, you know, like semantics in the Bible changes a whole verse. We really try to encourage people to say placing their child instead of giving up. Because when you talk to an adopted child and you say, oh, your mom gave you up, or you say, oh, your mom placed you, it gives that child two completely different definitions of whether they were loved or they were not loved.
Sure.
So, yeah. So in placing, like the women that we work with, they are very dedicated. Like they are involved. They choose the family. They know what they want for openness. They know why they're doing this. Like this is a very methodical decision. It's not a fly by your seat kind of decision. And so the majority of the women that we work with who choose to do this, one, it's more for stability than anything else. They do not have stable lives, and they understand that it may be a while before they have a stable life, and they want their child to have a stable life. Some have grown up in the foster care system and do not want their children anywhere near the foster care system. Some had a single parent, and they really, really want their child to have a mom and a dad. And basically, it's more for stability, I think, than anything else, in being able to provide their child with, like, one of the questions I always ask when we're like getting ready to choose a family is like, if you could have a perfect life, what would that family look like? And every one of them, every time, has a vision of what they like, how they want their child to be raised, what they would like. And it all kind of stems back when you do counseling with them to what they missed growing up. And they want to give that to their child. And so every woman I've worked with, whether it's somebody who has 5 different personalities, lives under a bridge, lives in a tent, comes from the wealthiest neighborhood, you know, college student, very educated. My youngest client has been 12, and my oldest has been 44 with a master's degree. And
Wow.
so it doesn't, adoption isn't just for the stereotype of, you know, like the drug addicted mother or something like that. It's really nothing like that. It's more just wanting their child to have a different life than what they can provide. And it's really a decision that's made purely out of love.
Vicki, can you just say something about what abiding love is and what it does, like practically?
Yes. Abiding Love is a non-traditional adoption agency. We will do home studies for adoptive parents, but at that point, we ask them to go get connected with either an adoption consultant or an adoption attorney. Abiding Love is set up to minister to the birth mother and the expectant mom. For years, they've been the ones that have kind of been put on the back burner and not want to be talked about. Like everybody wants to celebrate the adoption and the adoptive family getting the video, but nobody wants to talk about the mom crying in the room. And so we have really structured Abiding Love to pour into her and to love her and to make sure she knows that she's important and that she's loved. And so that's what we do. We really minister to women where they are. We come to them. They don't have to come to an office. And we come to them and help them any way that we can, spiritually, emotionally, financially. We try to do whatever we can to help them.
I think it's great that you focus a lot on the birth mother, because it's just got to be overwhelming to get to that point in their life, and got to be a tremendous relief that there is a option for them other than some of the other options that might have been out there.
I mean, I think so. A lot of everybody says, well, how do they find you? And some find us on the internet. But honestly, we get found either by other birth moms recommending us, or pregnancy resource centers, or hospital social workers. Majority of our clients come word of mouth, seeking for somebody that they can trust so they know that their child will be taken care of and they will also be loved just as much, not just the baby.
You're in Georgia and Alabama and Florida as far as Abiding Love.
Correct.
But you're part of a national network as well. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, I actually serve on the board. I'm on the board of directors for National Safe Haven Alliance. Every state has a safe haven law, but each state decides its own laws. And so like in Georgia, in the state of Georgia, if a woman wants to relinquish her infant anonymously, she can go to any hospital, fire station, police station, and the child can be up to 4 weeks old, 30 days old. And she should be able to just walk into the fire station, hospital, or police station, hand her baby over, and turn around and walk out without being questioned, asked what her name was, or any of those things. And that's the safe haven laws. And so NESHA, National Safe Haven Alliance, it's like a nonprofit that kind of helps organize it. So a centralized phone number that you can call. And so if you don't know the laws in your own state, you can call that 800 number, and then they can ask you what state you're from and then tell you what the law is and tell you how to go and relinquish your baby safely without getting in trouble.
Right. Because we hear the stories of just babies being left in different places and nobody knows the story. So, but a woman can walk in to a police station, fire station, hand them the child and turn around and walk out. We know the child's safe, know it's not going to be exposed to elements, know nothing's going to happen, and nothing's going to happen to the birth mother either, except for the emotional stuff. And that's where you come in to try to help that birth mother through that process.
If they called Amnesia the 800 line, then
Right.
we do, if they're willing to share their information, we will follow up with them and try to get them counseling if they choose to relinquish their baby through the safe haven law in their state. One of the things that people don't realize, though, that when you do safe haven, your baby goes into the foster care system. And so sometimes women, when they call, they ask about, like, when they learn that their baby's going to go into the foster care system, then they're not interested, but they still feel like they can't parent. And that's when Nisha will connect you with an adoption agency in whatever state that you're in. And so that if you want to do adoption instead, you then still have that option to do that. Because once you turn the baby over, you know, you can come back for the baby within so many days, but it's a little more complicated at that point.
So that's the National Safe Haven Alliance. You're connected to them. They can find you if they're in Georgia. If you want to go directly to you are abidingloveadopt.com.
Correct.
There are 3 questions. We call them the Holy Trinity that we ask each of our guests. The first is, you're obviously well learned and you're up on things. So you either read a lot or you listen to a lot of podcasts. So tell us what you're either reading right now or what you're listening to.
Well, honestly, reading, I am in the EDD program at Liberty University. So I read a lot that my teachers tell me to read. One book I'm reading right now is called Great Leaders, Great Teachers, and by Dr. Brett Felt. And that's been a really, really good book, just talking about the importance of a teacher and being a leader. Another book I loved out of the class was Total Church. I don't know if you've ever read that book, but that's pretty amazing. It's a new concept. Well, it's not a new concept. It's basically taking like the early church idea and really running with it. And so like they have a house that everybody lives in. It's like this big community. So it's an interesting book. You can kind of go one way or the other. And then one book I really loved was called The Benedict Option. Have you read that or heard of that one?
I have not.
No, I don't know that one.
It's a little bit controversial, but it's like depending again, but it's based off of like the Benedictine monks lifestyle and saying that if America and the American Christian doesn't start to like really separate themselves from the world and be the true light and be the true salt, then we're going to miss the mark, essentially. His argument, the author's argument, is that we're too blended. And so it was really interesting reading that book and then having everybody give their opinion on it in discussion boards, because some people didn't like what he was saying and some people thought it was really good. And so it's a book that makes you think, I guess.
And obviously I'm thinking all kinds of things. It's better to read the book and then form an opinion on it.
Yeah,
so,
I think
right. I could have some opinion right now, but yeah.
Well, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I mean, it really is. It made some things I agreed with and some things I didn't, but it did make me think.
Yeah.
All right, the second question is, can you tell us your favorite story from the Bible or any particular verse that maybe has informed your own work?
I would say mine is the woman at Shunem. She would, when Elisha would come through town, she would, take care of him. And her and her husband decided to build him a room. I don't know if you know which one I'm talking about, but build him a room on top of the house. And then he was like, to have his own separate room. So when he traveled, he would have a place to rest and pray and things like that. And I don't know, one of the things I'm looking forward to is finding out what her actual name is. Her name is not in the Bible. She's literally just known as the woman at Shunem. But what I like about her, I'm sorry.
What book, what scripture is that? What book does that come from?
Let me not tell you a story. It's in 2 Kings 4:8-37. And I just like her story because there's enough there that lets you know that she loved the Lord. At the time, I guess God, but she loved God and really wanted to do right by him. And she seemed to honor her husband and submit to him, but also wanted to do what was right. And she did. And she never asked for anything. That's what because, a lot of the barren women that you study in the Bible, y'all may not have studied it, but I have, obviously. So, from like Rachel, Rebecca wanting mandrakes and her and Leah going, just all the stuff. Anyway, the woman at Shushan is one that never said anything about her barrenness. There's no record of it. And she just served the Lord and accepted his role for her. And Elijah asked, is there something I could do for you to repay you for your kindness? And she's like, no, my family takes care of me. That's what she said. And his servant was the one who said, hey, by the way, she has no children. Huh. And he said, well, guess what? Next year you'll have a child. And so for me, that story, it just reminds me that God sees. Even when you think he's not watching what you're doing, he sees. And anyway, but that's just, I don't know, it's just always impacted me. It's been she was content with her husband. She was content with her family. Even though she probably really, really wanted a child, you don't see her being bitter about it, I guess is the best way.
Great story. I appreciate you sharing that. That's not one that a lot of people go to. So that's a great story.
Okay.
That brings us to the third question. Where do you find God's presence in your life?
Oh, wow. Everywhere. Just even like with the challenges that we face as a family. I personally, I am one of those women that I love being in, and this is going to be very controversial, but I love being submissive to my husband. There's a lot of things that I have to be in control of and I have to take care of, and I don't want his role. So I appreciate that I have a husband who steps up and leads his family, and that I can I can fall under his mantle and his covering. And so just, having that's really important to me. And honestly, in adoption, I've been doing this for 13 years, and every adoption that I've done, it's been amazing. What I tell people is like, I can see God's fingerprints in every placement, whether it's the birth mom and the adoptive mom had the same name chosen for the child, or, they had, when they were growing up, their favorite ice cream when they got sad was this. But there's always this connection that when God's hand is on it and it's part of his plan, that I could almost tell you probably in every placement, if I started going down a list, I could tell you where I saw his hand. Because people ask me all the time, how can you do this? How can you watch somebody suffer? Like I do watch women suffer, and I take on part of their grief, and that's part of my prayer. But when you see the way God heals brokenness, and this balm that he puts on it like nobody else can, that's what makes it where I can keep going. If I didn't see his fingerprints on it, I don't think I could do it. But the fact that I see him in it and see his love for this woman and love for this other woman, and it's just amazing to me to watch.
Well, thank you, Vicki. Zoom is about to cut us off, so we've got about 2 minutes. Can you just tell us how people can get in touch with you?
You can go to abidingloveadopt.com and reach out that way. We have in our 800 number at Abiding Love, you can call or text that. But 800-277-0748, you can call and text me on that also.
All right. Well, thank you, Vicki. This is great. This is really enlightening.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I talked too much.
No, thank you. That's why we're here. We really appreciate you helping us out with a lot of things today.
Okay. Y'all have a great day.